How's it going, guys? Welcome to Fight for Liberty Live. This week, we are joined by the chair of the New York State Libertarian Party and candidate for LNC Chair, Tony DeRazio. How's it
Hello, how are
going?
you?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good to hear. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem, David. Hi, happy to do it.
All right. So how's life been with the shutdown or the lockdown and everything? Has that been greatly affecting your life much or?
Honestly, not that much. It's my job, my day job. I'm an IT guy. I do IT support for universities.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
so it's actually been busier, if anything. Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, we've been kind of trying to get schools ramped up to do distance learning because a lot of them weren't ready for it yet.
Gotcha. I think that's a really cool thing that it's finally becoming a necessity. I've been hoping for distance learning to be a thing for quite a while. So uh, it's good that it's now a thing that most schools have the capability of doing.
Yeah, indeed. It's great, and there are so many. There's no one way to do it either. You can
Mhm.
do it with video. You can do it in just a conference call. Uh, it can be a true multimedia experience.
All right. Well, one thing that I like to ask everybody that comes on the show is kind of just like your libertarian testimony, how you came to the ideology, who brought you
Sure.
into the party, and kind of your
Well,
story.
I got a great story, and I love telling it actually.
Awesome.
So, I when I actually came to the party from the Democrats. I know a lot of the people who have come more recently are coming from the right. I came from the left.
Mm,
In 1996, I was, shall we say, disillusioned with all the candidates that were running. And if you remember, in '96, there were three big candidates. You had Bill Clinton, who had 4
hmm.
years of not doing so great for the country. We
Right.
still had the whole Lewinsky scandal had not broken really yet. And then you had Bob Dole, who was 112. Um, I mean, he actually seems like a nice man, but he was old back then, and so, kind of similar to how we're seeing Biden nowadays. He's making a
Hmm.
lot of stumbles. Yeah, he was the same way. And Ross Perot, who was just the loud guy screaming at the other two, and I didn't
Yeah.
like any of them. So I started researching. Well, what other candidates are out there? And I started doing some party shopping. I found the Libertarian Party of New York on the web. There were 12 pages back then, so it was easy to find. Uh, and they had a phone number on their website. And so I said, you know what? It was after work. I was sitting out at my desk at work, but work was over and it was late. So I said, I'll call, I'll leave a voicemail. They'll send me some literature and I'll read up on them. Nope, that's not how that went. They, there, a woman answered the phone. Her name was Dottie Lou Brokaw. She's since passed. She was vice chair of the Libertarian Party of New York, and she had been outside chopping wood, but the phone rang, so she came inside to answer and talked to me for about an hour about Harry Brown.
Wow.
Um, so, so we chatted for a very long time about some of my misgivings because a lot of people coming to libertarianism um, are very scared because it's kind of a scary thing. What do you mean you
Hmm.
want to shut down all the government? What are we going to do? And if you looked at his platform, I was going through some popular questionnaires at the time.
Hmm.
And if you look at Harry Brown's platform, what would you do with the IRS? Shut it down day one. How about the Department of Defense? Shut it down day one. How about the Department of Education? Shut it down day one. And now, as a libertarian, these all sound like great ideas. But
Right.
but as someone who had been a Democrat, it was scary. And frankly, Dottie Lou helped me see that one, that was a great end goal, but it wasn't going to happen overnight. So she
Mm.
helped me see the pragmatism of the libertarianism. And yeah, since then I've been hooked. I voted for Harry Brown and Joe Jorgensen back in 1996.
And now you get to vote for Joe again this year.
I do. I'm really kind of excited about it. I'm really happy to see she was a pretty good vice presidential candidate. And by the way, anybody who hasn't, I know she has videos from 1996 on her website, joej2020.com. But yes, you can see that she's just as eloquent now as she was then. She was good. She was a really good candidate.
Yeah, I haven't done much of like the background research on her. I did it a little bit when she first announced, but I honestly counted her out of the race for a decent chunk of it. Like back like January, February time period, I wasn't even considering her as somebody that was gonna continue through and even see the convention, let alone win. I don't know why I was so wrong about that, but something about what I was reading and hearing, I just didn't see a lot of support for her. So I kind of dismissed her, and then she was the only legit candidate left by the end of it. So
yeah, I kind of agree with you on that too. I was kind of in the same boat. I did in January, around the January-February timeframe. I was saying I don't think we've actually seen the candidate that we're going to nominate yet. Boy, was I wrong. I thought that we were going to see a Justin Amash or somebody like that come, and well, we kind of did. And I was telling everyone, see, and then a week later he said, nah, I'm good.
That made me so sad.
It made me sad, but it makes me happy that he didn't say, I don't want to be your candidate or be affiliated with the party. He said, I don't want to be your candidate. I'm still a libertarian. I'm all in for whoever you nominate.
Yeah.
So I like that. He recognized that he should be around the party for a few years before he just waltzes in and takes our nomination. Now in 2024, I kind of expect him to be our nominee. I'm sorry, in 2028, after Jo Jorgensen has completed her 8 years in office, I expect her to be our nominee. So either one of those, if she does, if in the off chance that she doesn't win 2024, but you know, since he's going to win 2028.
There you go. Yeah, I think I was definitely in that boat too. I was, you know, who's going to be the late entry? Who's going to be that person that walks in and just takes it? And obviously, I was hoping it was Amash, but when Gray jumped in, I kind of thought that it would be him. I expected him to take a lot more support than he did. It was very strange to me to see the convention go as poorly as it did for him, because he had so much support coming in, especially with Larry, and then they just kind of didn't go anywhere.
So, I mean, you know, how do I put this gently? Larry's a friend of mine. I like Larry. He doesn't. What we're seeing in New York is a really big echo chamber for Larry Sharpe. And a good chunk of the Libertarian Party loves what he's doing. Hey, can you come to my state and run? But there's a big chunk that doesn't like what he's doing and thinks that he's an infiltrator who's going to destroy our brand. So you've got enough of that. I kind of thought that maybe Gray would be carried enough. And the fact that Jim Gray was a past candidate himself, he was the vice presidential candidate in 2012. I thought that would carry enough, but at the same time, Larry doesn't universally play nationally. He sometimes struggles nationally. Now, had he run for the presidential nomination, that might have been a completely different story. But he wasn't running for the presidential nomination. I know people were begging him, "Can you just stay in the vice presidential race, no matter who the candidate was?" And well, oh well.
Yeah, I honestly, I have to kind of apologize to Larry, because I thought, in all honesty, when he joined, he was gonna stay there, and he kind of joined the race to be Amash's VP. but I was very much wrong about that. So I will admit that I misjudged Larry's character a little bit there. But yeah, I had to explain to a couple of other people from New York how like 2016 went for Larry, and you know that there's some baggage there, and not everybody loves him like we do here in New York. You're right. It's definitely an echo chamber around here
No,
for him.
it is, and well, even then, even in 2016, it was still pretty close. You could see the party nationally is pretty much split on him. He's fantastic, and in New York, there's hardly any split. It's almost universally we love Larry. Of course we do, because he's fantastic.
Yeah.
He because of what he did, I'm chair of the LPNY. That's
Yeah.
why I'm here. But he's been good to us in New York, and I think he's been very good for the party. But nationally, he doesn't always play so well. And like I said, had he stayed in as VP, he probably would have had that in a landslide. But
yeah,
not necessarily campaigning for Jim Gray.
Yeah, I definitely would have preferred to see him there than Spike Cohen. I don't have very much against Spike, honestly. A lot of my friends threw in the towel, and some people said they wouldn't even vote for Joe because Spike was her running mate. I can't understand that kind of hate for him.
So here's the thing about Spike. I didn't vote for him either. I'll be honest. I like Spike. I think he's a great activist. I didn't think he was the right choice for VP. The delegate spoke and said that yes, he's the right choice for VP, and to his credit, he's kind of been proving me wrong a little bit. He's been a good team player. He said, I was with Berman's very audacious platform before. Now I'm supporting Joe, and we're a team. And he's been that team player. He's been fantastic.
Yeah. I know that he reached out personally to a bunch of people that liked him but hated Joe, and kind of whipped the votes and the support a little bit for some of the really disillusioned vermin Spike people. So yeah, I think he's definitely done a better job than I think anybody saw coming, or at least the people that voted against him saw coming.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by him, and I won't hesitate to say that.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about his candidacy and Joe's combined is that between the two of them, they have the support of basically the entire party.
They do. They appeal to different audiences. You're right.
Yeah. So this should be the ticket that unifies us together, and every libertarian actually votes. It's I know way too many people that have been registered libertarians since the early 2000s or before that didn't vote for Gary Johnson because he's just a Republican, light, weak, pragmatic, whatever. Those people like Spike Cohen. So those people should still vote for Joe. And then obviously the pragmatic people are going to vote for Joe anyway. So this could be the ticket that brings us together, or it's the ticket that breaks us up even more.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're looking at a ticket to cure factionalism, this is definitely it.
Yeah.
And frankly, Joe is still pretty radical herself. I guess that's the word. She's presentable, but she still presents really strong libertarian ideas. She learned from Harry Brown.
Yeah,
they're very much cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, she's definitely significantly better than Gary Johnson. If you're afraid of that Republican light kind of mentality, she's definitely more of a libertarian.
Yeah. You won't hear me speak ill of Gary Johnson. I didn't support him for the nomination. Once again, he wasn't my choice. I was choosing another candidate at the time. But he was a good candidate for us. He got us 4 million votes. He got us 3 times as many votes as we had ever gotten nationwide.
Yeah.
He did something right, and hopefully Joe will take this and get us 6 million votes. Here's hoping.
Yeah, I think, I personally can't speak anything bad about Gary, because Gary is to me what Harry Brown is to you. He's the full reason that I'm a member of the party. I was basically in the same situation you were. I was looking at Trump and Cruz and Sanders, Clinton, and I'm like, what is this mess?
Yeah.
And my dad was like, hey, you should look up this guy. He seems like he might be in your ballpark. So I looked him up, and I watched 6 hours worth of videos about him that first day. and then been a libertarian ever since.
Hey,
So.
great. Well, we're glad to have you. That's a lot of times, and for all the people who were brought into the party with the Ron Pauls of I never aligned with Ron Paul, but I'm still happy that the Ron Paul Liberty Republicans became Ron Paul. A lot of them became Ron Paul Libertarians. I'm glad to have them in the party. I love that we're a big tent. And even though they didn't really agree ideologically, and in fact, we're at odds in '96 to a certain extent, because Ron Paul very famously left the Libertarian Party in the early '90s, and endorsed Pat Buchanan, who was running presidential campaigns against us and quote unquote stealing our votes. Even though that's not how votes work.
Right.
As an aside there, everybody points to 2000 in Florida. Oh, Ralph Nader, if all those Ralph Nader voters had voted for Gore, it would have covered that gap. But nobody mentions the other three candidates that got enough votes to cover that gap. One of whom, by the way, was Harry Brown. Nobody ever mentions Harry Brown, John Hageline, or Pat Buchanan. All who got enough votes to bridge that gap themselves. That's not how votes work. My vote for Harry Brown was never going to go to Gore, and it was never going to go to Bush, and it was certainly not going to go to Pat Buchanan. Anyway, but Harry Brown and Ron Paul, from an ideological standpoint, did butt heads, but they were still both libertarians, to the point where Ron Paul spoke at Harry Brown's funeral. And beautiful eulogy. It's the wonderful thing is that we can differ on some things ideologically. We're all going in the same direction, and at the end of the day, we can be civil. I know it seems like we argue all the time, but at the end of the day, we can get drinks at the bar, or however you want to relax at the end of the day.
Yeah, that is definitely been my favorite part of the Libertarian Party, being active mostly in New York City the last 3 years. I ran in the Libertarian primary for public advocate last year.
I remember.
And I lost fair and square, and then the guy who beat me bought me a beer afterwards. Like that's the Libertarian Party for you. And I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with and try to change the world with.
Yeah, really. I've met a lot of great people in this party, a lot of them.
For sure. So what necessarily made you want to be chair of the LNC or the LPNY? What took you from being a libertarian to, that step above?
Well, it all started, I guess, in 2016, when I had been kind of like one of those background libertarians, trying to get my friends to vote, not really one of those active ones. And I went to being a really active libertarian. I was a congressional candidate in 2016. I ended up having to be a writing candidate because there was a big to-do getting me on the ballot, and we know how ballot access was in this state.
Right.
We hope to never go back to that. It was horrible, and I was, unfortunately, I've twice been a victim of it. But, it happens. It's okay.
Yeah.
I still did respectably as a writing candidate. I got several hundred votes. It's not like I got 25 votes and left. So I was a congressional candidate. Showed up at the Greater Rochester Libertarian Party, got their endorsement. They liked me. They kept me around, made me vice chair pretty quickly there. And then a month later, I went to my first state convention, 2017. And we were sitting around, and they were picking candidates for, all the positions, chair, vice chair, all this stuff. And then at large came up, and one of my friends spoke up and said, "I nominate Tony DeRazio." And then somebody from across the room, who I didn't know, seconded it. Who are you, and why are you seconding my nomination?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so I was actually uncontested there. There were 5 spots and 5 candidates. So boom, yeah. And then I ran for re-election in that one. in 2018, in 2016, I started to get to know Larry Sharp when we were working together on the Alex Merced for Congress campaign.
Hmm.
Now the national vice chair, he ran for Senate in 2016.
Right.
We knew him when he was a candidate, and I kept that friendship. I worked on Larry Sharp's campaign as deputy director of development. It was my first real fundraising job, and we did great. We raised a whole lot of money. I can't take a single bit of credit for that. That is the candidate, the 100% the candidate. And then when we got the ballot access, now we're a ballot qualified party, and now we're forming the interim state committee, and that's when I was recruited to be on the interim state committee, and I started getting talked up for running for chair, which I did, and I lost to Jim Rosenbeck, who was a fantastic chair. He was the first chair of the ISC. He resigned a couple months ago. I was first vice chair. He resigned a couple months ago, and with that, I moved up into the chair spot. I have not declared for the LNC race yet. You've mentioned me as a candidate a couple times.
I've noticed it's going around Facebook and Twitter and such.
Yeah. There's a draft me campaign. I'm seriously considering it. I haven't declared or decided. I've given it some very serious thought. There are certainly things about the LNC. I kind of put together okay, if I ran, what would I do? What would be my platform? So I've kind of got an outline of that put together, but I don't know. It's late in the game, and there are two strong candidates in the race that it'll be hard to rise above the noise on that one. But yeah. I still might do it. I'm still strongly considering doing it. I'll let you know in the next couple of days.
All right. Yeah, I'm still completely undecided about that election. I mean, obviously, I guess not obviously, but I'm not a big fan of Josh Smith. But I also don't really know anything about Shipley or Bishop Henchman very much. I've talked to their campaigns a little bit here and there, and Nick Sarwark's talked up Joe quite a bit, and I respect his insight, but I'm still pretty up in the air. I was full blown reelect Nick, and then he decided not to run again, which
yeah, he's been chair for 3 terms. I get it. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be chair, and you never know if he may come back to it. He went right to the LNC as chair, so we know that it can be done. And I'm trying to figure out how to say this diplomatically. Because all 3 of those candidates you mentioned, I like them all. I'm friends with all of them. So none of this, if I run, would be personal against them at all. They're all great people. Mike Shipley is a fantastic activist. Josh Smith has done a good job recruiting people, a great job recruiting people for the party. He'll tell you his recruitment numbers all day long. He's done a fantastic job. He's right. He's not wrong. He's done a good job recruiting people for the party.
Yeah.
And Joe Bishop Henchman, he's also the chair of the DC Libertarian Party. So we know that he knows how to lead. He's a well organized guy. He communicates well. So I mean, they all bring strengths. None of them are bad. Yeah. It's just I also bring strengths that might be good in that race. There are some things that I think that they're overlooking. I think that true or not, there's a perception that the LNC is acrimonious and in bad shape, and ineffective, and I don't. And as great as those guys are, I don't know, and this is why I'm still kind of on the fence here. I don't know if they're the ones that can solve that and bring us forward. They're all going to, no matter what, the party's not going to fold in 2 years. So no matter who wins this race, we're still going to be
Right.
here in 2022 to pick our next chair or reelect them if they prove any of us wrong and are just the greatest thing since sliced bread. But
Yeah.
but I, that's kind of where my decision point is do I bring something to the race that they don't? I think I do, but
Yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about your leadership style in the LPNY, and
like
Jim speaks well of you, and I talk to Tucker Coburn quite often, and he spoke very highly of you. So, I think you've got a lot of support, especially from your state and even from other states. People are looking to New York for kind of an example and seeing you lead us in the last couple of months. And even as vice chair, you were still, I mean, I think I heard more out of you than I did out of Jim for the last year or so, which I know there's reasons for, but
sure.
you've
Yeah.
definitely you've been kind of at the head of the state party for quite some time. So I would support you if you ran, but it's obviously completely up to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
uh, yeah, I think the you mentioned the kind of disillusionment with the LNC, and I think it's definitely starting to reach a fever pitch. There's like campaigns out there like no incumbents for LNC,
Yes,
stuff like
there is.
that, and I'm like people people want to just like chop it down and start from scratch, which I personally don't think is a great solution. I don't think putting a whole bunch of new people in leadership positions that don't know what they're doing is always the best choice. But there's definitely some problems up there for sure.
Well, I mean, some of the criticism isn't fair. Um, to be clear, and I recognize this. Some of it's
Mhm.
perception, and then we'll get into the reality of it. I mean, the perception is, especially if you watch that May 9th meeting, um, you didn't you? You watched that, didn't you? All
Uh-huh.
9 hours of it, yeah. There was a lot of acrimony and a lot of anger. And if you read the
Mhm.
LNC list, you think, oh my God, these people hate each other. How do they get anything done?
Yeah.
But the reality is that they do get things done. They
Mhm.
are more effective than people think they are. I tend to agree with you. Chopping down the entire LNC is not necessarily the right move. I've seen the no incumbents movement,
Mhm.
but especially at the ending of the virtual convention that we had, part one of the convention,
Mhm.
that we had, the way it ended, really left an ill taste in a lot of people's mouths because really you had Nick, who I like, and I don't really like what he did. I understand why he did it. He was trying to make a point,
Mhm.
and kind of a loud point, and it backfired on him. So
For the people watching that might not have been on that, do you want to explain how that ended?
at the end, near the end of the convention, we were kind of talking about what next steps were going to be. We were adjourning. We knew we had the second part in Florida coming up here in a few weeks. Um, Nick made a statement, took his privilege as chair, and made a statement that was very much not in favor of having an in-person convention, and basically trying to bully. I say bully. I don't think bully was the intent here, but a lot of people felt like that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to compel. We'll use the word compel. I don't, like I said, I don't really think he tried to bully. He's trying to compel the body to replace him as chair right now, have the chair election right now,
Hmm.
and the body wouldn't do it. Um, Alex Merced, of course, took the gavel and kept the gavel, and will be keeping the gavel in Orlando because Nick's not going to chair that convention.
Hmm.
Um, although Nick will be in Orlando, he'll be in
Yeah.
Orlando as a delegate with the New Hampshire delegation, I think.
Right.
So I mean, and that so there was a lot of yelling and screaming, and
Hmm.
we all learned the word dilatory um, um, quite a bit. Um, you know, at the end of the day, and kind of getting back to the LNC, you know, what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
One of the weaknesses, one of the softness that I've just kind of seen as kind of an outsider looking in and talking to people who are not so much outsiders, I've nailed it on the head, is that there wasn't really any sort of a business continuity plan.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if there's a pandemic? I don't know. So
Yeah.
so starting in March and going forward, they kind of had to figure out what to do. What do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And when you are faced with a disaster like that without a plan, I expect there to be a lot of acrimony, and there was. There was a
Yeah.
lot of fighting, and there should have been, because there were a lot of issues that needed to be ironed out. Now, if you look at it, the LNC over the last 2 weeks, the acrimony is kind of starting to settle. There's still a little bit, but it's
Mm-hmm.
starting to settle a little bit because people now know, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we're going to move forward. So, yes, there are issues. Um, I wouldn't pretend that anyone who's coming in as chair is going to solve all of them,
Right.
but maybe bringing the attitude of cooperation, which I think I have a reputation of
Mm-hmm.
having, and bringing them together. I don't expect us to have a drum circle singing "Kumbaya" at the next LNC meeting, but I expect us to work together.
If ever there was a national party that would have a drum circle at their official meeting, it would be ours.
I mean, it would be.
Would
We
not
probably
surprise
would.
anybody.
We probably wouldn't be singing "Kumbaya." We'd probably be singing "One Toke Over the Line."
There you go.
But other than that,
Yeah.
uh, so
Yeah, I definitely I think that the LNC, in my opinion, handled the pandemic and the convention and everything like significantly better than I personally was expecting, or the rest of the country handled it. It took a lot of delegation, and a lot of people were watching that delegation, so it got really publicized.
mhm.
But they figured out a way to have our nomination happen, to reschedule the in-person convention. Everything kind of worked out. There was a bunch of BS. That Zoom call was awful, but it all kind of worked out. And we're watching the rest of the country, and like the Board of Elections struggled to figure out how we can vote this or next week, but the LNC figured out a way to get 1,000 people across the country to all vote at the same time. I think that's pretty impressive. Like definitely a lot of acrimony and a lot of yelling and screaming, but like you said, that was kind of expected. They're trying to figure out a really difficult problem.
Yep.
So I personally, there's a lot of problems in the LNC, but I also think that they argue a lot, but then they end up with a decision and a consensus at the end of it for the most part, where a lot of people and a lot of groups like the other parties just argue, and it's just a continuous, unending argument, and no one ever agrees on anything.
Yeah. But we're practiced with it. We argue so much that we know what we're doing, and there are definitely people who are very much in love with the Roberts rules, um, who love their points of order and points of information. It's okay. I mean, I'm glad, because I'm certainly not that guy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there are other people in the room who know Robert's rules.
Yeah, I'm kind of one of those people that enjoy it a lot. We had a motion at the New York City convention last year to remove Robert's rules from the bylaws for the city party,
Mhm.
and I was like the main opposition to that movement right there, because I was like, no, we're a real party. We have to be acting like one and have like real business meetings. Um,
Yeah, I agree. We really do, and as much as people don't like Robert's rules, they work, they keep order.
mhm.
Sometimes it's a little hard to kind of work around them, but they keep order. They really do.
Yeah, yeah, and it's how official businesses and groups of people operate. So, I personally, I think that if we're having a business meeting, it should be done with Robert's rules. But I also think that the party needs meetings that aren't business meetings. We need more events and just gatherings where people don't have to listen to Robert's rules, because we're libertarians. We don't like rules. Like,
What we need are more town halls. Really,
Mhm.
we need national. One thing that they haven't done well is communicate well with the state parties. I mean, they do the best they can.
Mhm.
And frankly, now I have a regional rep, and who's Tucker Coburn. He's
Mhm.
a regional rep for the LNC who does communicate well with me. And before that, Justin O'Donnell was good. But in general, the national party does not communicate well with the states. The states are
Yeah.
left to their own devices, right or wrong.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm glad they're not here controlling everything I do, but sometimes I wouldn't mind their support.
Yeah, I can definitely see a little bit of breakup in communication between the top and the bottom there. But all right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Oh, thanks for watching.
Woohoo.
Okay. All right, guys, welcome back to the Fight for Liberty Live. All right, there we go.
Did I miss any good commercials? I hate missing the commercials.
I'm really actually actively trying to figure out how to be able to put good video quality into here so I could do commercials, but we're still trying to figure that out.
Well, good luck.
Thanks. I am not a technological person very much. I'm good at like some forms of computer hardware. My dad's a computer programmer, so I know a little bit. But as far as like graphic design or video editing or any of the stuff that I have to do to maintain the YouTube channel or the website, I'm terrible at all of it. So this has been a very weird and long learning opportunity for me to get a whole bunch of skills I didn't have.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask your opinion. I wasn't sure. Have you heard the whole thing about Aunt Jemima today?
I have.
I'm curious your feelings on that.
Well, let's look at this for what it is. It is a private brand, Quaker Oats, Pepsi,
Mm-hmm.
looking at public opinion and saying, you know what, this may not be the right brand for us anymore. there is definitely some questionable background to that. Back in
Mm-hmm.
the 20s when it was okay to put a guy in blackface and 1920s and put a
Mm-hmm.
guy in blackface and have him sit up on stage. It really wasn't okay, but it was more socially accepted.
Mm-hmm.
The whole aunt label is rooted in Aunt Jemima, because they couldn't call her Mrs. Jemima. Uncle Ben, because they couldn't call him Mr. Ben or Mr. Smith or Mr. Freeman or whatever his last name was, because that's not how they referred to house slaves, and that's how the aunt and the uncle thing kind of came out.
Yeah.
The whole mammy thing. Yeah, I talked about blackface, and I was kind of referring to Al Jolson on that,
Mm-hmm.
who did the whole mammy thing. It was a Hollywood stereotype, but it was a stereotype
Mm-hmm.
that was perpetuated, and Aunt Jemima kind of perpetuated it. So I have no problem with them rebranding their pancake syrup to whatever they want to do. They are a private company and want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily think they made the wrong move. I think that there's a lot of backlash on things that do have kind of questionable backgrounds. Like I said, I mentioned Uncle Ben because I think Uncle Ben's going to be next.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is that, like you said, they made the choice. They're a private brand, private organization that made a choice to change their branding. It's not like we've seen with previous brands where the public crucified them for whatever they did and then they had to go change their thing.
Right.
If that's what had happened, I would very much not support this, because I don't think that it is that level of bad or perpetuating racism. I don't think people that are buying pancake syrup are really thinking, "Ooh, is this racist?" They're looking at the price, And I also think the fact that they rebranded like 30 some odd years ago to try to move a little bit away from
Sure.
that racist stereotype. They changed the picture, they changed the likeness, they tried to make it more modern,
Right.
and like a restaurant owner kind of feel rather than a house slave feel. So I
Right.
think when they made that decision, that should have appeased the mob, if that's what had made this decision. But I think you're right. I think they made the right choice. They saw how public opinion is changing, and holy shit, are they getting a lot of free publicity out of this?
They certainly are. I think pancake syrup sales are going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
On this one, and I feel bad for Mrs. Butterworth because she's got nothing to change.
Yeah. And I agree. I think Uncle Ben is next. I saw a news article that kind of roped them all together earlier this afternoon. So I definitely think you're right on that one. Because aren't they owned by the same company?
I think so. I'm not. No. So Aunt Jemima is owned by Pepsi. Quaker Oats, which is owned by Pepsi. Uncle Ben's, I think they're owned by Mars, like the M&M company.
Interesting.
So M&M, Mars, Juicy Fruit, Milky Way, Uncle Ben's. Yeah, it makes sense, right?
All right.
I think
so. One's owned by Pepsi, the other one's owned by a candy company.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's interesting.
Candy and rice. Why not? It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's weird because if you look at what these companies own, Pepsi used to own a whole lot more. They used to own what is now Yum Brands, which is Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC. They used to own those.
Mm-hmm.
And they divested. You know why they have Pepsi products at those places? Because they used to be owned by those places.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
That's why my mom usually goes to those places, because she's a Pepsi over Coke person.
Yes.
So that actively influenced her decision of where we're going to eat. Was like, will they serve Pepsi or Coke?
Yeah, I grew up drinking whatever generic soda crap my mother found at the store. But it is what it is.
Yeah. That's how I am now.
Oh, whatever generic stuff is at the store.
Yeah, just
Yeah. You know,
I'm trying to get away from soda. I did successfully about 2 years ago. I like just completely swapped soda for Arizona iced teas.
oh, okay.
And because they were cheaper, that was actually a main reason. Because I was spending like $10 a day because I was drinking like 3 or 4 Mountain Dews a day, and chop that in half because Arizonas are significantly cheaper, plus healthier, and they had the new energy flavor, so it had the caffeine of Mountain Dew. So I was like, okay, cool, that was a perfect switch. And being home, my parents are big soda people, so I'm back to drinking soda every day. It's a problem.
Yeah. I'm drinking one right now. Cheerwine, actually.
Nice.
Cheerwine is I'll give them a little plug there. They're very much a Southern cola. They're cherry cola. There's kind of a cult around them in the South, and they've kind of been edging north. I discovered them about a decade ago when I was visiting Delaware, and I went to Wegmans about an hour ago when you wrote to me about reminding me that I had this. I was buying Cheerwine.
Nice. I'm in a generic Pepsi right now, so
well, there you go.
It works. Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, I think the fact that they made this decision out of their own volition is a big deal. I think the mob mentality of trying to make everybody conform to not offending anybody is gonna be the downfall of our society. But I think people making their own choices to try to conform to what they think is right is what we should have. So I definitely applaud their decision there.
Yeah, it's not going to work. Eventually, you're going to hit the brand that's going to say, no, we're not going to do it. And by the way, we're not going to lose customers over it. I mean, I point to the Washington Redskins as patient zero on that. They are still, I mean, I think eventually they'll change their name. That's a terrible, offensive name. But they have been steadfast in that we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So
I think the show, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, did a really good take on that. I'm not sure if you watched the show at all, but one of the main characters is dating the son of the owner of the Redskins, and she's she grew up, or she is an Indian, but she kind of like left the tribe and has tried to be a white person for most of her life. But she eventually convinced them to change their name to something more offensive because they showed that their like jersey sales and stuff were going through the roof because people were burning Redskins jerseys, and you had to pay the Redskins to get their jersey to then burn it. So all you're doing is dumping money into this company that you apparently hate for some symbolism of a tweet of you burning a jersey. So she actually convinced like the entire NFL to change their names to like really offensive stuff for more money. I think that's like the best description of American economics that you can find. It's like, yeah, we're going to be more offensive for a little bit more money. Because yeah, you're not going to lose any support. There's plenty of people that will shop at a store or a restaurant because they're going against public opinion. I mean, I think Starbucks is a good example of that. The Christians attack them every single year at Christmas because they're doing some secular anti-Christmas something. And all they do is get, December is their best month every single year because of this. I think the fact that the country is so divided makes it really easy for somebody to just, if you're against one side, that means you're on the other side. So you still have 40% of the country supporting you most of the time.
Wow. You mean we are constantly fighting a binary attitude here?
Yeah.
Weird. Strange. Funny.
I love seeing, because you and I are joking about that because we fight that on a daily basis with the Libertarian Party, and it's really funny to see that show up within the Libertarian Party. Like even conversation about you running for chair, I've seen comments of like, "Oh, he's gonna split the vote. He's gonna steal votes from Joe," and I'm like, "How? Like that's the same thing we're fighting against Joe Biden, but they're
Mhm.
gonna use the exact same rhetoric against you." And it's hilarious because people don't even see the irony there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reality is, if I entered the race, I'll still vote from NODA. That's who I'm stealing votes from. None of the above.
Which I think might be winning right now.
It depends on the poll. I've seen polls where it is winning. I've seen polls where, in most of the polls I've seen, Joe and Josh have their cores, and then Mike and I are kind of starting to bubble up under them. And then NODA.
Yeah, I think if you don't join, and I don't see anything significant from Joe, I think Mike might have my support purely because he is kind of like that third party candidate in this race, and he's campaigning similarly to what you were mentioning earlier on that kind of unity platform over top of the binary attitude that even we fight within the LP.
Yeah, his bottom unity message is fantastic. I love it. I really do. It's already a good race. There's already 3 good people in the race. I would just be the 4th good person in the race.
Yeah. Could never have too many good choices, right?
No, that's true.
All right. What was I say? Yeah, I think this year is going to be a very interesting year for the LP. I really do think that Joe is going to at least double what Gary did in 2016.
I hope you're right.
I mean, I think that's a pretty like reasonable, like okay bar to set. Would be like 6%, 7%, somewhere around there. That's what I would like to see out of this, because Biden doesn't have the woman card to play that Hillary did, and there's plenty of people that voted for Trump in 2016 that are like, what mistake did I make? Especially like the Bernie bros that voted for Trump in 2016 are not going to make that mistake again. So I think we have a good shot, and I think Howie Hawkins has a really good chance too. I think the Green Party should grow significantly this year.
I kind of, if I wasn't a libertarian, I like Howie. There's a lot to like about Howie. And he's a nice guy too. I like seeing nice people run for president. I really do.
Yeah. My only problem with Howie is that it seems like he runs in like every single race. Like he runs for mayor of Syracuse, governor of New York, and president of the United States every 4 years. So he's running a campaign 3 out of 4 years every cycle. But he does good work. He, as much as I disagree with this, it's the main reason that we were able to ban fracking in New York State. Like, I don't like that, but he succeeded in doing that as a third party candidate because he pulled enough support in the gubernatorial election. I would like to be able to see the Libertarian Party claim that, Larry dominating the gubernatorial election is the reason that we legalized marijuana this year or something like that,
So the one problem with that strategy is that, eventually the shtick grows old. He's running for mayor of Syracuse. Great. Perennial candidates tend to lose support eventually. And if you look at Howie Hawkins' 3 gubernatorial runs, they've gone boop, boop, boop.
Yeah.
He's kind of come downhill a little bit. And this time he had a little bit more competition in the third party range because Stephanie Minor did pull more from the left than she did from the right.
And they're from the same city, so that also did not help at all.
No, it didn't help. That's true. They are both from the same city. Um, but Howie is a very good activist.
Mhm.
He's been very good for the Green Party, and I think this is his first time. He doesn't have their nomination yet, but
Right.
I think this is the first time he's going to get it. There's almost no doubt. He's the presumptive nominee. I know that.
Hmm.
Um, and I applaud him for that. I look forward to seeing what he can do on a national stage. The problem is that when he runs for governor, I can't speak for Syracuse because I'm not in Syracuse. But when he runs for governor, he doesn't campaign that hard.
Right.
He when he his last race, the one he ran against Larry, um, he let his comptroller candidate do most of the campaigning. Most of his Twitter accounts was him retweeting what his comptroller was saying.
Right.
You know, and um, I don't want to get to a point where voters are fatigued with our candidate. Tom Golisano was another third party candidate back in the up till the early 2000s. I think
Mhm.
his last race was 2002, and his campaign over three runs went up every time. He ended, I think, in his third race, he got 11% of the vote in
Wow.
2002. Um, yeah, he was running against Pataki all three times, I think. Don't quote me on that. He may not have been the third time, but he was definitely the first two times. But so it can work. Um, we need to not wear Larry out. You know, I,
Right.
one of my favorite phrases and Larry's favorite phrases coming out of my mouth is, "We don't need Larry Sharp to run for every office. We need 1,000 Larry Sharps. We
Right.
need people to step up and actually run for races." And this year, frankly, the LPNY's got that. We're in we're in quite a few congressional races, quite a few Senate and Assembly races.
Yeah.
A lot of local races that are happening this year have libertarians, and even libertarian primaries, which is
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah. We're gonna have a big libertarian primary next year in New York.
Hmm.
That's gonna the mayoral primary is gonna be fun.
Oh, I bet it will. Um, yep, I know a couple of people are running for that. Yeah,
Yep.
I suspect that in 2 years, crossing our fingers on the ballot access, um, we're going to have we may have a gubernatorial primary. It may
That would
happen.
that would be really cool to see. Um, I would obviously vote for Larry, but well, I don't even want to say that because maybe somebody better steps in. That
Larry,
would that would be really cool if in 2022, no offense to Larry, but it would be really cool if he lost the primary because we had somebody that much better than him
yeah,
running.
that would be fantastic.
You know, I love Larry, but if we found somebody even better than that, that would be pretty awesome for the
Yeah,
LPNY.
yeah, I wouldn't. That would be a good problem to have. You know,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
really would. So
Maybe then he would consider running for mayor or something more local.
I know some people have been trying to get him to run for Congress because he lives in AOC's district.
Yeah,
That's just a fool's game because that woman can campaign.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
I've worked with her on campaigns. Yeah,
Oh,
she's. I worked very lightly on Tiffany Caban's DA campaign last year,
hmm,
which was basically completely run by AOC's people. And yeah, they know what they're doing. They had for like a grassroots out of nowhere campaign. She had only announced for like a month and a half, and they already had hundreds of volunteers, literature drops all over the place. You know, they campaign hard and well, and almost won. You know, and I really believe that was a rigged primary. Because there's no way she actually lost fair and square. I don't believe that.
yeah. Um, but I was, I know it's very popular to say, "Oh, look how stupid she is. Oh, look at her crazy eyes." But she took down one of the strongest Democrats in Congress in a primary. She just took him out, and it
Yeah,
wasn't close.
yeah. Yeah, she's definitely got some Yeah, I mean, obviously, I disagree with her on a lot of policy, but I believe wholeheartedly that her heart is in the right place, that she truly believes that what she's promoting in Congress is the best for the American people, which is all you can really ask for out of a representative is represent your people and try to do what's best for them, and if I disagree with you on what we think is best for your people, then that's a whole different conversation. But as long as you're a representative, not a ruler, you're not there to try to conglomerate power around you and be some corrupt bureaucrat like the person that she replaced. I'm okay with keeping her in Congress for a little bit.
Yep, I agree. I as much as people like to be detractors to her, she's an upgrade to what was there, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
for sure.
She is, and there are several Congress people around. As the chair of the Libertarian Party of New York, and potentially a national chair candidate. Here I go, complimenting members of the duopoly.
There you go.
But I think there are a number of people in Congress who are bringing different voices, and frankly, it's these different voices that brought out people like Justin Amash, who is now ours, and are bringing out people like Thomas Massey, who we keep trying to recruit, and Rand Paul, who we keep thinking is ours and really isn't. But there are people on the left too that are absolutely in that same boat. Tulsi Gabbard we share a lot of her foreign policy views are very similar to ours. When she starts talking about regime change wars, I'm standing there going, yeah, Tulsi, all right, that's something we haven't heard.
Yeah.
That's something you haven't heard from either party. That's really kind of a libertarian idea. I'm not saying that these people are. I necessarily agree with them ideologically. Even Bernie Sanders, I don't agree with him. I used to say that he was a righteous man who really needs an economics lesson. In all honesty, he's someone else whose heart is in the right place. I don't agree with his policies. His foreign policy is fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I severely agree with Tulsi Gabbard's policy because I worked for her. I was her deputy volunteer coordinator. So yeah, I mean, she had a whole bunch of things that I would consider to be libertarian policies. Very anti-war on drugs. She was, I think, the most pro-gun Democrat. And even though her and I have argued on more than one occasion about the Second Amendment, I still severely respect her opinion on it because, I actually got to one of the coolest moments in her campaign, which most of the campaign thought was like one of the worst moments. But we were at a town hall and these two people started arguing about guns. Like it was in the question and answer time when they were supposed to be talking to Tulsi, but somebody got up and was very pro-gun and started critiquing her on all of her anti-gun rhetoric, and somebody else got up and was talking about how her daughter's life is more important than our right to own guns. And Tulsi actually kind of stopped. She let them kind of bicker for about a minute and a half, and then stopped it, kind of, and just moderated the debate a little bit, and found a solid middle ground. And everybody in the room kind of was like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's cool." And big chunks of the room were like cheering on these people that are arguing, and both people are critiquing Tulsi for being too wishy-washy or too middle of the road, and she ended up convincing the entire room that middle of the road is probably the better option, which we don't see enough of in politics at all.
No, not at all. That's I like Tulsi. I really do. There's a lot. You don't have to convince me. I really, even when we're talking about other parties, I don't like to get into factionalism because there are good things about other parties. We're a Big Ten. If you're going to attract people from other parties and get them into our party, you better find some common ground.
Yeah.
And you better learn how to talk to the things that aren't common ground. And frankly, 2A is one of them that's a challenge with some Democrats. So seeing Tulsi take a little less than, uh, ban all ban all ban all squirt guns stance is refreshing from
Yeah.
the Democrats. That's not the stance that you've seen. It's been a very popular ban all assault weapons, whatever that means. Ban bump stocks. What like they know what that is. I am definitely. I myself am not the. I would never, despite the shirt I'm wearing, which I haven't really shown off.
That's a great shirt.
Yes. I'm not the necessarily the guy you'd go to be your 2A advocate. There are great 2A advocates, and I support the work they're doing. I'm definitely a supporter of 2A, but I mean, it's not where I fight for liberty. It's not the hill I go after, and
yeah,
it is for other people. I'm glad they're on my side. Because now I'm babbling.
Yeah. Yeah. 2A it was one of the main issues that I grew up on. I'm from kind of the country just north of Syracuse. So, there's quite a few guns in my house growing up. I've been able to shoot since I was like 8. And also one of the main issues that brought me to the Libertarian Party because it was mostly guns and drugs was basically the reason I ended up in the LP, because neither of the two parties agree with me on both. So, if I want both of those things, I have to be a libertarian. There's no other party that supports legalization and the Second Amendment.
You see, for me, it was public education, because I was working in public education when I was first introduced to the Libertarian Party. And when looking on a state level, we had a governor that was mandating. I'm an IT guy myself by trade, so we're looking at a governor. So I joined. I got my first Libertarian card in 1997. I wish I still had that card. They looked a lot cooler back then. But they were just paper. They're much better. They're much more durable now. But
there you go.
But they're much cooler looking back then. I worked in a public school, and this was about the time when something called New York Wired was out. And you've probably heard heard about the lottery money and where it goes.
Yeah.
You probably heard, it goes to the schools, it goes to education. 38% of the lottery goes to education. It's not 100%. The rest of it goes to administrative costs and to the general fund. But 38% does legitimately go into education and supporting initiatives, or at least it did back in the 90s. I don't know exactly what the percentage is now. I don't imagine it's changed much. So one of the things that was a big initiative back in the late 90s was wiring the schools, making sure schools are wired. So the Pataki campaign said, the Pataki administration sent to public schools stuff to wire the school. So they would send network jacks, cable, outlets on the wall, not taking into account what the schools might already have or might actually fit into their infrastructure, just sending whatever they got in bulk. I still have a box of it in my garage. It's 23 years later. I have a box of this crap in my garage. So what we did in the school district I worked for, which was a suburban school district in the Rochester area, was we put one in every school, just one jack. So here, we'll run this one for you. See, look, Governor Pataki, just in case he showed up for his photo op, so he could, do this. He never did, and we were already well on our way to wiring our schools. We didn't really need his cable anyway, but this is the type of stuff like that that's kind of wasteful and not really well thought through are the types of things that that brought me to the party. And from so working in a school district, I'm seeing oh, look, public education is really heavily mandated by the state and by the federal government and by guidelines. You know,
Yeah.
that's that's the type of thing that was happening and still is happening. Do we
Mhm.
need a federal Department of Education? Um, not in the
No.
certainly not what it's doing now. If we do, um, that's taking power from the states that really the Constitution didn't. Forgetting libertarianism for a minute, it's unconstitutional to have a federal Department of Education. But
Right.
what somebody needs to learn in New York um, to live isn't necessarily the same thing that somebody needs to learn in Wyoming. Someone who's on a college track may not need to learn the same things for someone who's on a welder's track or an art track or whatever. Larry's idea of changing to a K to 10 and then kind of doing the last 2 years college prep or trade school, that was a
Mhm.
great idea.
Oh yeah.
That's a groundbreaking idea and a good one.
Yeah.
But
And I haven't talked to a single person between the ages of like 12 and 20 that doesn't like that plan. The only people that I hear shit talking that plan graduated high school 40 years ago.
yep, yeah, indeed.
So
Mm.
it won't affect them in any way, shape, or form, but they're going to oppose it when everybody that it will affect actually kind of likes the plan.
And as somebody who graduated high school less than 40 years ago, but more than 20, um, 30 for the record. I still see value in doing that because
Yeah.
I have daughters, and what my daughters had to go through in school is not the same thing I went through in school. I didn't go through New York public schools. I grew up in Connecticut actually, and then moved here in the early '90s
Gotcha.
after college. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I dodged public school completely. I was actually homeschooled K
Oh,
through 12. I did it in 11 years, so I got to go to college a year early. So I've been a big advocate of homeschooling and kind of decentralized schooling since I can remember, because I grew up watching myself get smarter than all of my public school friends, and not even like a diss on them, but I could just see that my quality of education was significantly higher than theirs, because I would just say words that I know by heart that they have no idea what I'm talking about, or just like reference a book or a thing in history that they just didn't know because their school didn't teach them. I
well,
did a
go
sorry.
on.
I did a thing about on the show on Monday about the Tulsa race massacre. That's not taught in most schools or any
No,
schools. So we could definitely do a lot better on that education wise.
I was lucky because, well, I'm going to blow my own horn here for a second. I was one of those smart kids, so I was in all the
Right.
advanced classes, and I got a great I did go to public school, and I got a great education in public school. I did a lot of college credit in public school. I had those opportunities afforded to me. I had a whole year of University of Connecticut credit that I brought into college
Wow.
with me. Yeah, it was fantastic. So I was sitting in class and I was taking, let's say, advanced chemistry, but really that's chemistry 101 and 102 that I'm just sitting there taking for free. For free, yes. Taxpayers in Connecticut paid for it now. I know that, but I didn't
Yeah.
know it at the time. But it was fantastic, and that allowed me to graduate college in 3 years with and I got a double major to boot at that
Wow.
because I had that. Yeah, that's an interesting story in itself. But let me finish this. But one of the classes I did take that actually wasn't a UConn class. I had to take an AP test to get college credit for it. Was Advanced American History, and we did learn about Tulsa because I had a teacher who was a civil rights activist in the '60s and really spent a whole lot of time. She spent 2 months of the year drilling into us how big the civil rights movement was, what a big deal it was. Um,
Huh.
and then I took the AP exam, and it was all about civil rights. So I'm wondering, was she in charge of writing it? So I mean, I did really
That would be
well on
cool.
that AP exam. She wasn't. It was a coincidence that we got lucky, but I had her as a teacher, and as a result, I got a great history education. But one of our teacher, a couple of my teachers are. I'm old enough where my teachers are starting to die off now.
Mhm.
And I've had two pass away in the last month, and one of them was one of my math teachers, and he was also my cross country coach. And I posted on Facebook about how he was a good teacher and a great coach, which was true. He wasn't the best teacher I ever had, but he was good, and he was a great coach. And then people responded, "Yeah, he's the reason I hate math." You know, yeah, he was terrible to me, and it kind of made me realize, yeah, you know what, the position I'm in, the position I was in, the fact that I am came from a point of somewhat intelligence.
Mhm.
It was one of the quote unquote good kids. Yeah, I can see where I might have gotten a better education from the same teachers. I was privileged. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, teachers are going to teach the kids that want to learn.
Yep.
Which is why I think Larry's K through 10 is a big deal, because if the kids don't want to learn, all they're doing is making the class bad for all the kids that do want to learn and the teacher that actually wants to teach. No teacher wants a class full of people that don't want to be there.
No, they don't. And I did. I really did enjoy learning. Um, I really did. So I was a delight to have in class most of the time. I'm sure. I'm sure I wasn't always.
Yeah, I was kind of a weird mix between like class clown and teacher's pet. So I
Hmm.
was like that kid that like I I learned and I paid attention, I did my homework, but I also mouthed off to the teacher like back and forth. I would like answer the question correctly, then make a smart ass comment.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah.
Yeah. I was the kid who would occasionally correct the teacher.
Oh,
Uh,
that's always fun.
yeah, it's like so. I remember, and I think it was fourth grade. We were learning about polarization.
Mm.
Um, and so my fourth grade teacher had two filters, and said, and look, if you turn them, you can't see through them. And I would look and say, yes, you can. I can see through them. And it's because they weren't perfect filters.
Right.
Yeah, I was missing the point there, which is so bad.
That's great. Uh, yeah, I think education is as far as like coming to the Libertarian Party, you were talking about the just wasteful mentality of the government sometimes, and that I definitely didn't understand any of that when I joined the LP. I was very like I joined because of social issues, and then the LP has spent the last 4 years drilling into my brain all of the stupid things that the government has done for the last couple hundred years. Um, I think a lot of that stuff should be in our high school textbooks. Stuff like what happened to what used to be Central Park, or Tulsa again. Like
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Waco. People need to know what that is, what happened, like that your government is not perfect and that there are flaws and there
Oh yeah.
are bad chapters in American history. They try to make an American history textbook make the government look as great as humanly possible when we all know once we become adults that that's
Mm.
not the case.
And I will say, as much as it's cool to hate on the government, the Libertarian Party,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's not the only thing that that textbooks whitewash.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there are activists, there are historical figures who are portrayed one way that isn't all that balanced.
Yeah.
It's, oh, look at how great this person was and how awful this person was. One of the old adages is everyone's a villain in someone's story.
Right.
For me, it's my ex-wife, um, or and I'm hers. I'm sure,
Right.
but So there's always two sides to every story.
Right.
I know there are certainly historic figures that kind of transcend this. Hitler, I know Germany is very embarrassed about that, but
Hmm.
there are other figures that we see as villains that other like Fidel Castro. How many years have we been told how much of a villain he is? But
Hmm.
Cuba sees him a little bit differently.
Yeah. Or
You know,
Muammar Gaddafi is a
that's
big
another great.
example of that.
He's another great example.
Yeah, I mean,
He, you know,
he was trying to bring his country to like the top of the world stage and was about to succeed. I fully believe that we assassinated him just because he was about to make us look bad.
maybe, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and it's you know how you earn votes. You sit there talking about the enemies of America and say how great they are.
Right.
But but in all seriousness, I mean,
Hmm.
there are some of these people who are good and bad.
Hmm.
We were Here's something that we don't necessarily dwell upon in history, but Stalin, who was one of the cruelest world leaders in history, was our ally.
Right.
We talk about the Red Scare, but the only real war we fought with them, they were on our side.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, we had a Cold War with them, but yeah, we fought side by side with him.
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
I think one of the most interesting examples of this that I got to experience growing up, because up until elementary school through middle school, I was using a curriculum that was written um, in like Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. Then for high school, I did like a DVD program that was from a Christian school in Pensacola, Florida. So learning about the Civil War from the perspective of people that are in the South was just a complete game changer for me because they actually studied what happened in the South a little bit more,
mhm.
and talked about the states' rights issues a little bit more rather than just the slavery. It's not just, oh, these guys wanted to own slaves, we said no, they said fine, we'll leave, and then we killed a bunch of them. Like that's not the story, you know.
It's part of the story, sure,
Yeah.
but it's not the whole story. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not one of those people that like flies a Confederate flag and thinks that they were the good guys in the story by any stretch of the imagination. But I see Lincoln as more of a villain than I see Douglas because he's probably the most communist president America's ever had.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
Yeah. But that's another thing that we're never going to learn in history. We're not going to learn that Lincoln started the income tax. That's just not something that we're going to talk about in history as long as we keep whitewashing our textbooks like that.
No, we're not. And by the way, I was, like I said, I had a great American history teacher. I did learn
Mm-hmm.
about the whole states' rights issues. It was
Yeah.
it was interesting to have a balanced view on that.
Yeah, it's important to have a balanced view on things. I would love to learn about like the American Revolution out of an English textbook. Like that would be really interesting to me.
It's funny you mentioned that. I spent about 6 months living in Canada last year, in
Hmm.
Calgary.
Cool.
Um, yeah, it was. It was for work. I mean, I
Hmm.
was traveling an awful lot back and forth, but essentially, I was living in Calgary. Yeah, it's a great experience, and now I'm a Flames fan. Um, but
There you go.
yeah, you cannot step into the Saddle Dome without becoming a Flames fan. It's just not possible. Not possible. Um, but um, one night I was talking to somebody who was a veteran from the Iraqi one of the Iraqi wars in the Canadian military,
Hmm.
and getting his perspective on American politics was very interesting. Canadians are far more versed in American politics than Americans tend to be in Canadian politics.
Yeah.
So I, being the political junkie, am the exception to that rule. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty well versed in that myself. And Um, but it was interesting to kind of hear their take on gun control issues and our president. And you know, Calgary is in Alberta, which is the most conservative. It's like they're Texas. We're Canada's Texas. They like to say that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and they love it when Americans say that. But it was kind of interesting. They definitely have a different perspective on us than we do. Even they have a different perspective on Trump. We are very important to Canada because we are their biggest trade partner, and Canada really should be more important to us because they're our biggest trade partner.
Right.
We really should know more about Canadian politics. We really should be paying attention. I mean, I know most Americans at this point can probably name the prime minister, but can't tell you how he got picked.
Nope.
You know,
but to be fair, most Americans aren't well versed in American politics, let alone foreign politics of any kind.
Yeah.
I've gotten to work the last 6 months pretty heavily with a woman from London, and getting to kind of compare Trump to Boris Johnson has been fun conversations because they're like almost the identical same person, and then but just these little kind of tweaks. And obviously Boris Johnson is significantly better educated than Donald Trump, but
yep,
at least on paper. He doesn't always show it, but he is well educated on paper.
Yeah, he comes off as a little buffoonish. He's certainly not as buffoonish as he comes off. I know that.
Yeah, I mean he does that on purpose. I think Trump does a little bit too, but I don't know. I kind of flip back and forth between my opinion on Trump, because for a while I thought that he was a moron, and then I thought he was a genius pretending to be a moron, and now I'm kind of back to thinking he's a moron.
Here's what I think. I think he kind of got into this presidential race not thinking he'd win. He'd get a couple of press cycles, and that was it. He did win and saw what he could do and saw the power, and now he is catering to his base. I don't necessarily think he believes everything that comes out of his mouth, and he's the type of person who will just speak out off the cuff. I think he makes a lot of errors when he speaks that probably make his staff cringe, and they have to cover for it. Oh, what did you just say? Bigley? Really? Bigley? Coffee? What is that?
We're going to inject disinfectants to get rid of the coronavirus.
I don't really think he meant to say we're going to inject. Get your Clorox wipe, squeeze them out into a syringe and smack them in your veins. I don't really think he meant that. I think he really is kind of a blue collar mentality guy. I don't necessarily some people think he's evil, and some of the things that comes out of his mouth I kind of understand why they say that, but I don't actually think he is. I think I don't think he's the worst president we ever had. I don't think he's the best president we've ever had.
Right. I think, I definitely don't think he's the worst either. I think I might disagree with you on the evil part, just because I do kind of believe a lot of the pedophilia stories and stuff like that. And, he's got quite a lot of rape accusations, and he's definitely not a great guy.
He's not a super guy.
But I think he has to be pandering, because he was a Democrat. He is a Democrat. The only reason he's not a Democrat is because he didn't like Obama. He was a registered D for his entire life. He supported gay marriage before Hillary Clinton did.
Guess he did.
He was. I mean, he's been a big blue Democrat for most of his life. Didn't like Obama, found out that the right for some reason liked him, and then figured out how to pander correctly. I don't know if he believes or feels half of the stuff he says, because the majority of his life is the exact opposite of what he's doing right now. So either he had a big change of heart, or he just got smart and realized Republicans are easier to convince than Democrats.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's the stereotype that rich people are Republicans and poor people are Democrats. It's no longer really the stereotype.
No.
No, but maybe he got wrapped up in that. You know, in the
Hmm.
Reaganomics of he's a product of the 80s. He really is a product of the 80s. If you look at how much gold he still uses, he's a product of the 80s and kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he may aspire to be Reagan, who, by the way, was also a Democrat before he was a Republican. So
Hmm. And also one of the worst presidents we've had.
yeah, if you had asked me that question, I was never a fan of Reagan, and I would probably have put him in the bottom five
Yeah.
personally. And I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that. There are some, but I mean, he was a warmonger
Hmm.
who sent us into a stock market crash
Yeah.
with deficit spending.
Yep. And passed a whole bunch of tough on crime bills and was the first big anti-gun president, really.
Well,
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 not
you
the
know,
first, but
I give I give him half a pass on that one, and only half a pass, because he got shot. You know, if somebody had shot me, I might not like guns either. And
that's fair.
one of his senior advisors, Brady, you know, it was the Brady bill, because Brady got shot right next to him.
Yeah.
You know, I get it. I give him a little bit of a pass on that, but it's not good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the old school Republicans and libertarians that just praise him is what really gets me. I definitely, I agree that is a good reason to be kind of anti-gun. He did have some really solid economic policies. He was, I think he was one of the better like humans as far as presidents go. He was kind of up there with Obama and Carter and Clinton. They really well spoken, like first term of Clinton. Well spoken, honorable, decent human that everybody in the country kind of just liked.
Yeah,
But unfortunately, all of those people have seemed to be some of the worst presidents as far as policy goes.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, usually it takes another term or two of presidency to kind of see how a president did. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I was one who was hard on Bush 43 when he was president, and I still not a fan of a lot of his foreign policy, but he ended up not being as bad, and frankly a far more decent person than I would have made him out to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was popular to dislike him in a lot of circles,
Yeah.
and we're at a point where we're at a point in history, which is why we need Joe Jorgensen, where no matter who wins, if it's Biden or Trump, half the country is going to love him, half the country is going to be calling for his head, his impeachment, and they're going to call him a war criminal. No
Mm-hmm.
matter who it is, no
Yeah.
matter who wins.
Yeah. I mean, they would be right about calling both of them a war criminal anyway. Already, neither one of them has to win the election.
I mean, I have never been a fan of Joe Biden. I haven't liked him since the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a high school student, in 1987, when he was running for president for the first time. This was the campaign that Gary Hart was supposed to win until monkey business happened. He plagiarized one of his speeches.
Right.
And Maureen Dowd, who was then a very young journalist for the New York Times, caught him and wrote an article about it. And his reaction wasn't, "Oh, my bad, I lifted some stuff from this, let's move on." His reaction was to try to slander her and try to find times that she had plagiarized.
Yeah.
That's
he's
not
a scumbag.
good. Yeah. And so when he ran again in 2008, I think was the next time he ran for president. I think it was 2008. I think that was the next time.
Something like that.
And he's running again. It's like, why is he running again? Does nobody remember Maureen Dowd and what he did to her? You know? And again,
Apparently not.
yeah. Now again, yeah. People have short memories. Now it's like, oh, like vote blue no matter who. I know there's a lot of people who are saying that. I say vote gold no matter who, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and it's even funnier because the majority of Biden's base voted in both of those elections you mentioned.
Yes.
He doesn't have much of a youth support. It's not like it's people like me who didn't live through that or don't know that happened and are just, oh yeah, he's cool, like they're doing with Bernie Sanders. He's getting support from the people that watched him criminalize being black and plagiarize people in presidential campaign speeches and vote for every war that we've been in since he got to Washington. And they're like, whoa, yay. I'm like, I don't get it. I will never understand Joe Biden voters. Makes no sense.
I don't get how he suddenly was the front runner. I don't understand. There were some of those Democrats who I would say were not better choices. As much as we all love Marianne Williamson and loved watching her, or Tom Steyer and Andrew Yang, they weren't better choices. But Tulsi Gabbard was.
Yeah.
Heck, Amy Klobuchar was a better choice than there were half a dozen better choices than Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And
I'd put Andrew above him pretty high. I think he was my number 2, like right under Tulsi. But he dropped first. So,
well, he was talking about things. He's talking about manufacturing automation stealing jobs that nobody else was talking about.
Yeah,
I like that he did that. If I was actually going to name a candidate that I would have voted for, or would have considered not raising pitchforks against, then I would have trouble campaigning against, I would have named Tulsi and probably Amy Klobuchar. She's, if the Democrats really wanted a moderate Democrat, she was your best choice.
Yeah,
and she won a couple states, I think. She did. So. Yeah, she definitely was coming out strong, and then all of a sudden, I support Joe Biden.
Yeah,
you could kind of see the defeat in her, like she was bullied into it. It's.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that multiple of them were kind of bullied into it. I mean, Kamala Harris is supporting him out of her own volition because she's a terrible human.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and then the other thing is they all signed a legally binding document that said that they would endorse whoever ended up being the nominee. So
I get it.
Like Tulsi had to endorse him like legally, which sucked, but lost her a lot of fans. I spent months defending her online. Like, guys, she signed a legally binding document. Leave her alone. But now all those same people are pissed off at Joe Jorgensen for also shit talking Tulsi Gabbard, which is interesting. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that clip of her on Part of the Problem with Dave Smith.
I did not.
Dave asked her about Tulsi just in general, and she went on to talk about a debate that one of the presidential debates where they asked who's the worst and most dangerous Democrat, and she picked Tulsi Gabbard and kind of went on a little rant on Dave Smith's show about her being the most dangerous person in the left and faking out libertarians with anti-war and then being actually a socialist underneath and like all this stuff. And I was like, yikes. But so now, like, I had, with multiple of my friends, we'd been working to kind of cultivate moving all of Tulsi's support into the LP, at least for this election. It's still a woman, it's still anti-war. Just those two things by themselves you would think would create a pretty natural carryover from Tulsi to Joe. And this week, Twitter, like the Tulsi Twitterverse, was going nuts with that clip because they were like, "Oh no, never stepping foot in the Libertarian Party ever." We lost at least I lost a lot of like followers and friends and stuff out of it, which I think was stupid because I didn't support what Joe was saying, clearly. But I think you mentioned earlier that the LP's best bet is to kind of court the fans of those types of candidates and those people like the Tulsis and the Masseys and the Rand Pauls. Those are our warmest leads. The people that voted for Rand Paul in 2016 are some of the most likely people to vote for Joe this year.
Yeah, I agree.
And shit talking the people around us, the people closest to us, is not gonna grow the party in any way, shape, or form. I'll give Joe a little bit of a pass on that one though, because I think Dave has a way of like sucking people's brain cells out to try to fill them up. But I've gotten into a number of arguments with Dave, so him and I are not friends.
Understood. Yeah, I get it. It's easy to get caught up in that type of thing. It really is.
Yeah, I think the infighting in the LP is probably one of the most annoying things to watch happen because, I mentioned earlier the amount of people that didn't vote for Gary Johnson, or didn't vote for Larry Sharp. I know multiple people that were registered active members of the LP that didn't vote for Larry because they thought his ideas were too radical. And I'm like, or crazy or stupid, depending on who it was. They use a lot of adjectives, but that kind of lack of support, you mentioned vote blue no matter who. I'm obviously not of that mindset. Just because they have an L next to their name doesn't make them a great person, but Larry was a great candidate. So was Gary. So was Devin. Those same people were trying to cut me down when I ran last year because I was some people are calling me part of the problem for even wanting to run for office. And that kind of like lack of support will never make liberty win. We can't progress the country towards liberty if we're not willing to vote for liberty-minded people.
Yeah, no way. We have to. We really have to support each other. We have to support our own as much as we can. And that doesn't mean blind support. It means supporting good candidates, and so we don't have the reputation of just cutting everybody down.
Right.
So, for what it's worth, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, if every registered libertarian actually voted libertarian in every election, we might actually see some victories or more victories. But I think we got a lot of good victories last year. I think we can build on that this year into the next couple of years. At least like local races, I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I agree.
I just got to join Tom Quitter's campaign for state senate, and that one seems like a quite winnable, like serious race, and I'm kind of excited about that one.
Yeah, I like Tom Queter. He'll tell you he's never a quitter. But no, he's great. We have he's in one of the most winnable races that we've got. And it's races like that aren't the ones that are big and flashy, and that's where we're going to make inroads. We're going to win at places where we can build a grassroots organization, where we can win over small towns. Our big victories in 2019, and we had 6 pure libertarian victories around the state and over 100 fusion candidates that won. And the fusion candidates were mostly good candidates. Not everyone was good. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, I don't care if the libertarian ones were good or not. They were mostly good. I have issues with a couple of them, but we these are victories for us, and
yeah,
we had but almost none of them were in big cities. The biggest one was Binghamton. The biggest victory we had pure was Broome County. A lot of them were in small towns where the libertarians are activists and are getting out there and are meeting people. That's where we got to start, because people in small towns will get to big towns and bring and not necessarily forget they're libertarians.
Yeah.
And that's how we win. So that's why I love Tom Queter's campaign.
Yeah, and he overlaps with the majority of Broome County, so that DA race should, give us some good. They won't be able to dismiss him nearly as easily as they would dismiss most libertarian candidates, because we can prove this district actually likes libertarians because they elected one last year.
Yes,
So
yes, we did.
So I think we won't have to fight that stealing votes kind of mentality that we were talking about earlier. Shouldn't be as big of a problem with this race as it has been in previous races, because we're up there now.
We are. We're in the conversation in that town now.
Yeah.
That's that one's kind of a different example, because it's hard to say that he's a great DA for us.
Yeah.
He's not the best libertarian. He's not the worst. But he let's just say some of the promises he made to the Libertarian Party he didn't live up to, and he's disappointed me. But he is a libertarian.
Yeah.
And he registered with our party, and he has not left our party. He is still a libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
He is not registered with any other party, and I've got the list right in front of me, so I can tell you he did. And,
we just need to build on more of those kinds of victories. I mean, that one was pretty big. That's a county-wide office, but like next year we have the entire municipality of New York City is up for re-election.
Yep.
And we already have, I think, 2 or 3 city council candidates. I don't know how many of them have actually declared yet. I'm keeping a lot of people's secrets of that they're probably going to run next year. But I would love to see us fill the entire ballot, have 51 city council candidates next year.
So would I.
That's kind of my goal. I've recruited one specifically from Tulsi's campaign. He's running in like the Jackson Heights neighborhood. And he's running as a Democrat and as a Libertarian. He's trying for both of our nominations, but he's running against somebody that's term limited out. The other campaign that I'm working on is also term limited, because this is like the first election where term limits from city council are actually starting to take effect, because that's a new law. So a bunch of these people that have been there for like 15, 20 years are finally being term limited out and have to be replaced. So New York City could see just this massive political overhaul next year. And even Bill de Blasio's term limited. So, almost every municipality office could change hands, and that would be an awesome sight to see in New York. I know that wouldn't make too much of a difference up there in Rochester for you, but
no, not so much. But it's to everyone outside the state. Everybody else thinks it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, New York. Oh, so do you ride the subway to work every day? No, I'm 6 hours from the nearest subway.
Right.
Oh, did you go up did you see the Empire State Building? No, I'm 6 hours away from that.
Right. Yeah, I love it. Now I'm in both camps, because I am an upstater. So when I say I'm from New York, I mean Syracuse, but now I do ride the subway to work every day. So.
Well, sure. And like I said, I didn't grow up in New York, but I was born here actually, I've lived here for half my life now.
Yeah.
More than.
Yeah, I think the way that city politics is going to influence upstate the most would be if we do well in 21. Maybe not even saying that we win anything, but if we do well enough, double-digit percentages, I think that would show upstate that the city is ready for at least somewhat of a libertarian candidate and get the Republicans from upstate out of that fear mentality and actually vote for Larry in 22, because the reason that people don't want to vote libertarian is because they obviously don't think that we can win. But Republicans in New York State have to come to terms with the fact that neither can they. I mean, Cuomo demolished Molinaro, just destroyed him. So next time around, I don't know why anybody would think it would go differently. But if we can show that maybe 10, 15% of the city is going to go gold, and we get most of upstate to go gold, then I think that's the only way Larry wins, is if we prove to upstate that the city wants him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people who, the Democrats going to carry the city anyway, so what's the point of voting? And there's definitely that mentality. If you look at more, we got less than 50% turnout in this state for a gubernatorial election. If every one of those people had turned out and voted for Larry's the governor. But of course, then there are the people who say, "Oh, Larry stole the governor's office from what's his name, Folinaro or whatever."
Yeah.
No, he didn't. But
no, that guy's a joke of a Republican too. Anyway, he's as much of a Republican as Trump. Like he's a downstater. He's big tax and spend, big government. He's not even pro Second Amendment. Like he pandered it a little bit, but his voting history was not pro Second Amendment in any way.
His lieutenant governor was even worse on that. They really weren't a good ticket. Not for 2A.
No. Which is, I think, why Larry did as well as he did, especially in that conversation. He was definitely the most 2A governor candidate. And I'm sure he will be again in 22, because the Republicans are very much not 2A anymore.
Yeah, they've kind of backed away from that. I mean, they really have. It's sad. Or as Trump would say on Twitter, sad. Anyway,
yeah. I think the mentality of people voting for a party because of what they used to stand for just kind of blows my mind a little bit. The Democrats that are going to vote for Joe Biden whilst out there protesting for Black Lives Matter because they think the Democrats are the Black Lives Matter party. Just know, like, look at Joe Biden. Just anything he says, anything he's ever done, any piece of his voting record, he does not give a shit about black people. Just because he worked under a black person does not make him not racist. and the black vote is what won him the nomination too. South Carolina was the state that flipped the script for him. He was in like 5th place until South Carolina happened, and he won in a landslide and just kept going from there, and it was a nonstop train from there. I just don't understand how he won the entire black vote when he's the reason that their lives suck as much as they do.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, but he did.
Yeah. And it's going to keep happening. So, all we can do is put up the best candidates that we have and hope that people see the light eventually.
That's all we can do. We need to keep promoting our candidates. We are the best option to the duopoly. I keep going back to Nick Sarwark's famous quote: "Your tears are delicious and your parties will die." That's what our goal is. We want to be in the conversation. I don't necessarily. I'm as much as we talk about how, libertarians, we should be running everything. I don't want a single party system either. I like having other parties. I like having checks and balances.
For
I
sure.
just think that the two that are in power are too much alike and have gone unchecked for too long.
Agreed. I'm a big fan of like the Dutch system. They have like a solid, robust, like 5+ party system.
Mhm.
They have 5 major parties and then like still 3 or 4 minor parties. And the Libertarian Party is one of them. Is one of the major parties there.
Yep.
Uh,
Yes, they are. Canada has a similar system. They're a parliamentary system, and I mean similar to the UK, where you have in Canada, and right now the parties in Canada are the Liberals, the Conservatives, oh my God, how am I forgetting this? New Democrats, the NDP, who are the basically the progressives. You've got the Greens, and you've got Black Québécois, who I love. And all of these are in the conversation. I mean, 4 of them, 4 of the 5 I just mentioned, are recognized parties. They are recognized as either the majority party or recognized minorities. And then the Greens are in the conversation. There's room for parties like the People's Party, who were kind of stole the Libertarian Party's niche for this last election, but there is a Libertarian Party in Canada too.
Yeah, it's a lot more right than ours.
Well, yes, I mean, yeah, absolutely, but those parties keep changing. I mean, the current Conservative Party that's been up there, they were founded in 2004. There's a lot more growth, whereas the 2 parties that we have been the same 2 parties for 150 years.
Yeah.
Since the 1850s.
Yeah, we need to change that system. Now, I just watched Hamilton again last night, and when Jefferson emerges to be like the second party and the Democratic Republicans are a thing, is kind of an interesting moment when they create the 2-party system. And you even see it in the play, just the bickering and the back and forth right from the beginning of the 2-party system. And we've never had more than that. The parties have changed and fallen off and grown, but it's always been 2 parties.
And every once in a while, for an election cycle or 2, you will get a third party that comes in, like the Dixiecrats come to mind. The Bull Moose Party, whatever Ross Perot was. I think it was the Reform Party the second time, no party the first time. But you'll get that for a cycle or 2, and then they get squashed.
Yeah. Or you have like the one time that it worked with the Republican Party, but now they've been there for. Yeah, I love reminding people that Abraham Lincoln was a third party candidate. People don't remember that.
No, they don't. But I mean, really, the Republican Party of the late 1850s was starting to grow out of the remnants of the dying Whig Party.
Right.
So
yeah, it was a very quick and almost seamless transition between the 2 versions of the 2-party system. The Republicans just kind of came out of nowhere, took over, and right back to the same BS.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again. How can people find out about you, and if keep in touch if you decide to actually run for chair?
Well, I have a Facebook page, Tony DeRazio Libertarian. Tony for NY is facebook.com/Tony for NY. We'll get you there. Clearly, lpny.org. I would be remiss if I didn't say go there and find out about our candidates and everything that we're all about.
Sure.
Please support our candidates. And if I run, I look forward to having a lot of conversations with a lot of people.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much again. Have a great night.
You as well.
All right.
All right. Bye.
All right, thank you guys so much for joining us and watching. If you want to see the latest episode of the Fight for Liberty show, it is up on YouTube as of right now. Well, Yeah, it should have just gone live. So go watch that. And I will see you again next week for Fight for Liberty Live.